Hey, we're excited to be with Jim Purdy, Director of Agent Origination at Magna Life Settlements. Jim, thanks for taking the time to be with us to discuss the life settlement industry. How are you doing today?
Great, thanks. Yep. I'm doing great. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate the partnership and look forward to the future endeavors together.
Great. The first question we have is, what makes Magna different than other companies in the life settlement industry?
I think it's important for people to understand that the industry really consolidated after the '08 financial crisis. And ultimately, there's only a few multi-billion-dollar funds that are supplying the majority of the capital in the space. And what separates Magna is that we're owned by one of the multi-billion-dollar funds. So we're the only ones that are vertically integrated directly to the source of money, which then puts us in a position to cut out a few different links in the chain, which ultimately give the producer the potential to make more money or give extra money to their clients.
Gotcha. How do you see the life settlement marketplace in the future? Okay.
We have the largest growing demographic in our country, going from 27 million seniors to 80 million in the next 18 years. You have healthcare rising at twice the inflation rate. And then you also have some challenges with universal life insurance products because we've had 10 years of low interest rates. So as the population gets older and a lot of products are underfunded, people are going to be getting some big premium notice hikes or may need to have some money to pay for healthcare. So I see a lot of opportunity out there. Certainly the addressable market is probably 20 times bigger than what we're actually seeing now. So nothing but opportunity for all the producers, which is why I'm so excited to put Performix into their platforms.
Yep. So I'm sure you get this a lot, but what makes it the right time to look at a life settlement?
A couple things. There are some changes that are happening. Big change in the tax laws, and now the estate tax exemption is much bigger than it was before. And there's a lot of people that, did some good planning, great attorneys out there that were forward thinking, had some tax issues, dealt with it. Insurance was a wonderful vehicle to solve the challenges. And now they just, quite frankly, don't have the tax liability they once did. So sometimes it's driven from just like anything else, their life cycle changed and then now no longer need the coverage. And that's a good opportunity. It's certainly always wonderful when you find out you looked at your statement every year and you thought it was worth one amount. And then now all of a sudden you have a forward-leaning advisor that's well aware of all the industries, not just the one they operate in, that can now bring value sometimes 10, 20 times over cash value. So sometimes it's a tax reason. Other times it's a tough situation. You have families that a loved one is going into a care position, and the families usually are trying to deal with it themselves. They realize relatively quickly that no matter how much they love their mom and dad, they're not suited to be a caregiver and really outstretch their capacity. And then as you progress into care, then they start seeing the emotional stress, now the financial stress starts. And sometimes when they have to pick between their parents that are clearly on the way out of trying to give them the best care they can, and then their children of whether or not they get to go to school, it can be really tough. And a lot of families in America are really struggling and going through this with our healthcare and the rising cost of it. So we found that having a life settlement often, it's great to teach an agent how to make some extra money and go through their buck, but it's even better when that agent has the ability to really affect change in a family's life and make a situation that was really tough where they're almost rooting against their family to now realign the family into the normal interest it should be, which here's the money to pay for the care. And now they've taken off the stress and can really root for them to do well. So I've seen it personally change lives in a really meaningful way on the health side. And then I've also seen it on the other side where people just don't need the policy anymore, and they're just getting more money than the carrier is willing to pay.
We've also seen too, as we manage policies through our platform, some of these policies have premium adjustments that are just too much for the client to afford. So now they realize that cash surrender value, taking that, there's another option for them to look at a life settlement too. So what you guys are doing is bringing a lot of value to the end policyholders that can't afford the premium anymore, and now there's a better alternative than just surrendering it. So,
you know, Mike, I'm glad you brought that up. That brings up why I'm so excited for the partnership with Performex, to be able to digitize a book of business so that people can see in 30 seconds where all those potential problems are. It is always nicer when somebody, whether they like being in this situation or not, it's always nice when you're giving them the time, you have the time to actually give them a choice to do something about it ahead of time. The people, I think the future of this business, you know, the industry is really not set up right for management on the fixed side, because insurance agents are only making compensation for the most part at the beginning of the sale. So then you find yourself with these attorneys or CPAs that are legal fiduciaries and may have very well been the ones recommending the insurance to begin with, that are in these positions where they have no idea or any kind of vision of their book of business as to what is the next headache. So by having Performex, number one, bring that book of business into the 21st century and digitize it. And then number two, to be able to identify all the headaches. And then the fact that you can have a headache, right? And then have a potential solution offered through life settlements is an absolute game changer. And I feel like every single IMO, general agency, or certainly any agent with a book of business should absolutely not only come into the 21st century through Performex, but they should also really dig into, well, what are these other options that I should have for my client? And, you know, how great would it be if you could actually bring some solutions? And I know sometimes people are a little bit nervous of learning something new at the back end of their career, but Magna, this is where we're going to separate ourselves from the other providers. We're taking a premier role into educating the advisor world and making it easy to, let's say Performex did identify some challenges in a person's book of business. And then life settlements, you know, through the Powered by Magna filter, had opportunities or a solution to whatever those problems are. As soon as that's identified, we can help that agent with pre-marketing material that will white label their logos with all the content that they need. If they need call campaigns, email campaigns, ad tracking, or training on how to actually do the business, we're happy to oblige. We have plenty of resources at the staff to teach them and walk them through. If somebody has contracting, we'll schedule the mobile notary, have the witnesses lined up. All of those professionals are familiar with our contracting, and our closing team, you know, they did 1,250 files last year. So very capable group, and we will always take the time to teach an agent how to do this so they look perfect and professional right out of the gate. And it's relatively simple transaction, you know, when it really boils down. So super excited. I know that was a long answer, but you know, we got a lot of stuff going on here.
Yep, for sure, for sure. What are the different state regulations based on where the policy are issued, and what effects could those have if we don't sell a policy in Florida compared to Ohio in some cases?
I think it's tremendous to have 43 of the 50 states regulated. Hopefully we can get to 50 states. Magna takes a very aggressive approach towards that. So where even when we do business in a non-regulated state, we're using our Florida contracts. So, you know, as it relates to disclosures, some of the states have commission disclosures via the provider, and some of the states have a broker requirement to disclose the commission. But pretty much of the 43 states, they're all disclosures.
Okay.
You know, and that's the part most people need to know is how much commission's coming out.
You know, For the policyholders and the agents out there, what policies can be, what products are better than the others? Can this be done for all products? Where do you see the sweet spot, and what should the agents be looking for?
Great question. In the shortest answer possible, whoever's health has changed the most since the issuance of the contract is going to have the most settlement value. As we drill down into that, I would say that the majority of the policies we were buying are UL policies, some IUL or BUL, but they're all based off of the UL chassis. It is possible to buy term policies, but that's going to depend on what their health is. If the term policy is convertible to a UL, then that's always better to levelize the premium. But you still need the arbitrage between what their healthy health was when they took out their offer for originally. So usually it's standard or better that most of the marketplace is buying. And non-smoker as well. We buy very few smoker policies. And then I would say we're breaking health down into 5 categories. Somebody that would say they are the same or better than other people they know their age, a little worse, much worse, and significantly impaired. Most of the products that are issued standard or preferred are typically going to work life settlement wise and show value when they get to that worst category, and much worse and significantly worse. The policies where there's no health change, and there's no arbitrage, you have someone issued standard and their standard health today, the only way those work are usually when you have a UL contract typically issued past 2002, because that's when all the no lapse guarantee provisions come on. Those guaranteed provisions are what funds, there are sub-accounts that fund the guarantee. So if somebody ever did a 1035 or a short pay scenario, that's going to juice the sub-accounts. And the longer that's been enforced, the more shadow account value, which then gives us the ability here at Magna, which is another differentiator through other providers. We have the ability to reverse engineer the product and pull out the sub-account value. So sometimes we may ask for more items than other people would like to give or give to other buyers, but we're doing it so that we can position them in the best spot and be the most aggressive for the offer and give it to the clients instead of keep it for ourselves. So it is possible if you really shop the marketplace, especially if it was preferred best, and you have a UL contract with a no lapse guarantee, it's possible that they can be perfect health and have up to 30%. I think the biggest one I've seen is a 35% base offer on somebody that has absolutely no health arbitrage, but the policy had just such favorable cost structure because you had a bunch of sub-account value. So we could get a little bit more detail on that, but that's something that we specialize in. I have a podcast video going specifically into the 3 different ways to pull extra juice out of a contract, and I'd recommend people going to the site and looking at it. But that's the short one.
Gotcha. Yep. No, great. So again, with our relationship, we are uncovering and looking at a consolidated look of business for the agent. Once we uncover the opportunity and the agent and the client want to move forward, what is the timeline? What's the process? Because I think a lot of people, stay away from it because they think it's complex and hard to do. Can you just share with us the timeline and the process from the beginning to the end of selling a policy?
That's a great question, and I'm going to answer it by telling you a story. 15-year life settlement experience agent out of Naples brought to me a complete medical record, had a HIPAA form signed, had the in-force illustration. This particular contract had a no lapse guarantee, and he came to the table at the beginning with a copy of the policy, the premium history, and an annual statement. By the 4th day, we had ran an NLG optimization stream for him based off the sub-account value and priced it. And I had made a very aggressive offer. It was a $3 million file that we had bid at $1.5 million. The agent accepted it. It was well above the marketplace. We put contracts out the next day. He flew to another state where the client was at, had contracts being signed. While he was in the air doing that, his back office sent me a copy of the original application, had IDs, proof of social for all parties involved on the transaction, and pretty much was filling in the blanks of anything that we needed relating to the policy data, which is on our cover sheet for any contracts that we have out. He came back the next week, so this is now only the second week in the process. Our compliance did our due diligence because we had all the items in 4 days and had sign off. And on that 10th day, 10 business days now, we escrowed the money into the escrow account. This particular agent had a good relationship with the carriers and was able to get changes through in 2 hours, and the money went into their client's account. So 10 days is the record. Anybody that I hear often that comes and says, oh, the life settlement industry is this, the life settlement industry is that, it's like that is the very reason why you should be working direct with one of the largest buyers in this space. We deployed $1 billion into this space last year through our fund as well as through Magna. And, you know, it's really not that hard to do the transactions. The hardest part is usually when people don't have a complete submission, or that a broker might say, well, we're going to try to drum up this. They take 3 weeks to get the life expectancy. Then they go try to get some offers. And the next thing you know, you're 3 months into it just on the auction process. You may or may never get to what the actual intrinsic value is, and people get frustrated. You know, and then on the closing process, so many people are so busy coddling agents instead of just being transparent, saying, hey, this is what I need up front, that, or they don't train them, and then they fumble their way through it, and it's a mess. So I really encourage people going to our training platform. We have 5 different videos. It's less than 10 minutes that an agent can walk through, and one of those specific videos is telling them the nuts and bolts of the transaction and how to, you know, make like corrections so that you can go faster. And then on any of the dialogue that we send out from our system, we're always going to have a pro tip at the bottom of the page or any material that we're putting out that tells them how to shorten the deal cycle. So it's just, they may be frustrated, but they've been dealing with the wrong group or too far from the direct source.
Gotcha. Another big topic in our world is this new best interest standards. We believe Performix is set up perfectly for this to make sure that we monitor proactively how the policy is performing. How do you see the best interest relate in your world, in the life settlement world?
You know, that's, well, look, it's the future, whether you like it or you don't. I do notice that the industry is trending away from the relationship business and more into a transactional state. And the great thing about that is that once it turns transactional, transparency is right behind it. So now consumers have the ability to know where their policy is through platforms like yourself. And we're really just taking that one step forward. It's not that everything is about life settlements. This is about maybe trust-owned life insurance due diligence, or it's just flat out about life insurance due diligence. And if you're not sitting there telling your clients, hey, these are the headaches on the horizon, this is what you would have to do if you wanted to keep the policy, by maybe reducing the face amount to keep the same premium, or by showing them an opportunity to say, well, here's what it would be if you were to do a lump sum, or here's what it would be with a life settlement if you were to have a life settlement provider take over 100% of the premium and maybe make your beneficiaries an irrevocable beneficiary by doing a transaction called a retained death benefit transaction. It's my view that in the best interest contracts and the fiduciary role, and as we develop, it's my position that it's not that anybody's selling any one part of what to do. It's that everybody should be doing their due diligence for their clients. And life settlements may or may not have a role in it, but they should have that choice.
Yep.
If they don't have that choice, then it's a problem.
Yeah. And I think that's why we line up so well, because, our philosophy is exactly the same. We are monitoring the policy, but at the end of the day, when the decision has to be made, they need to know what they need to do internally with the current policy, if what the product marketplace looks like, and do a life settlement evaluation, because only then they have the information they need to make an educated decision. So I think we're aligned perfectly there, and I think that's going to bring best interest standards forefront for everyone moving forward. So
absolutely.
So with life settlements, you hear about life expectancy tables. Why is it so important, and what are the LEs that you're looking for to make a good offer?
Great question. And here's another differentiator. There are 1,000 different intermediaries out there that are brokering files, and their value prop is that they are going to shop the marketplace to try to get the highest market value. As you go one layer up from that as to, well, who are they shopping to? There are multiple providers out there that are they're in the margin business. They try to buy the deal for the lowest market value possible. So they're only going to let the market dictate what to purchase it at, so that they can make the highest margin when they push transactions to an investor. So this is where, when Magna is owned by a multi-billion-dollar fund, we have a fiduciary duty to the investor, and we're going to look at that file based off its intrinsic value, not necessarily the market value. So there is no provider that has put more money in the pockets of seniors than we have in the last 3 years. So it's important for people to understand that if you're dealing with somebody that's flipping for a margin, then you're not going to be able to sell policies for really, probably the outer limit is 12-year life expectancy. Most providers are going to want to be under 10 years because they don't want to get stuck holding the bag and not be able to flip the transaction. Because then, if they're making a living based off turning over their money as many times as they can in a year, well, then it's going to be problematic if they can't send that to somebody. So when it comes to our side, I see that the market trades at a certain rate of return for an investor, right? And that adjusts based off the supply and demand side of the policy flow. I see that we are able to go out 20 to 22-year life expectancies with the right contracts that drive intrinsic value to what the market IRRs are. So the buy box is roughly twice as big as the other people. And that's why when you're doing business, or even if you're using a brokerage, which we're happy to receive your business through the broker channel, you are always better off if you're going to have us as a provider, because of the way we're structured and that we're playing the long game, not the short cash game, always better off to have us as a direct relationship, and then by all means have your brokers cover the rest of the marketplace. The broker will keep us honest in your mind if you don't have that established relationship already, and then we'll keep the market honest. As far as the LEs, we tend to gravitate towards the LE providers that allow us to back test their data. We find it interesting that investors that use LE companies that don't let you back test their data, it's an interesting thing. Why would somebody want a report from a group that doesn't know how their life expectancies performed? But it happens. Sometimes that could be a good thing for a seller. There are other proprietary things that we have where, yes, we do view what doctors say and put weight to that, but we also view what big data says. So, it is a different way to view things, and all it ends up meaning to the producer is that there is a lot of cases that I see continually that do not price for other groups that are absolutely home runs for us, which is another reason why I'm so excited for the Performex, because you're going to be able to know that within a relatively short period of time, every case that fortunately has a settlement opportunity on it ahead of time, before you even get the clients involved. So hopefully that answers what you're asking. Marketplace wants under 10 years. we're happy to go out 22.
All right, and then I guess the $1 million question here is, how do agents get paid? What's the compensation? Is it different based on the size of the death benefit? How do you compensate agents?
Yeah, so there's two different ways to work with Magna. We have a lead referral agreement that sometimes agents do not have time from what they're doing. They want their clients to have the opportunity. They would get certified by watching those training videos. We would then enter into a lead referral agreement. In that lead referral agreement, it's building them into our origination fee. And then if they hand off a client to us, so they're not involved in the transaction, they're not talking a lot of life settlement talk, they're handing them off to us, then when that transaction closes, they get paid through the origination fee from us, and we handle it. The other way, which the majority of the agents that have a book of business, I do see a lot of IMOs that are using the lead referral program. Tremendous way to create alternate revenue for their companies. But the other way on the agent side is if they go out and get their life settlement license. It's relatively easy. In the majority of the states, you just have to pay a fee, fill out an application. You have it usually within a couple weeks. Most of the time, it ranges from $50 to $500, and most states are right about $100. There are certain states that require some training, but it's relatively a simple license to get. If you have a life settlement license, then you have the ability to take a piece of the gross offer. And it works very similar to what a realtor does. They represent the seller. Excuse me. They represent the seller, and between the seller and the buyer, we would make a gross offer. And if they have that license, they can take a piece of the gross offer. The industry standard is the lesser of 30% of the offer or 8% of the face. Now, what they end up taking is between them and their client. It doesn't really relate to me, but those are the limits that we go by as far as the industry standard, whether they're in a regulated or non-regulated state.
Okay, and I guess the last big question we have is, if a sale goes through, how is it taxed? Is it taxed? I know, over the years there's been some complexity. Is it getting easier to figure out if there's going to be tax or not on a sale of a policy?
Great question. Well, I'm certainly not an accountant, and Magna is not giving out tax advice, but it is my understanding we have some marketing pieces for this on our website, or if people are interested in having leave behind pieces, by all means, let's engage and we'll give you material from our marketing department. But ultimately, cost basis is not taxable. Cost basis is defined now under the new tax laws as any amount of money that went into the policy, not just the COI like it once was. Anything above the cost basis up to the cash surrender value would be taxed at ordinary income. Anything over the cash surrender value up to whatever the gross offer is in a long-term capital gains. And if you have a client that has a life expectancy under 2 years and they're terminally ill, then that is viewed as a death benefit and it's non-taxable.
Gotcha. Well, Jim, this has been fantastic. Thanks for your insight. We are looking forward to the Magna Performance relationship, and we believe we're going to bring a lot of value together for agents and their policyholders, for years to come. So thanks for your time.
We agree with your sentiments, and I really appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.